Let's now go to that giant takeover of Twitter. 61 billion Australian dollars. Elon Musk is promising more free speech, which potentially even opens the door for Donald Trump's account to be reinstated. So here is the White House spokesperson, Jen Psaki, on the president's view of Twitter and of free speech.
No matter who owns or runs Twitter, the president has long been concerned about the power of large social media platforms, the power they have over our everyday lives, has long argued that tech platforms must be held accountable for the harms they cause. He's been a strong supporter of fundamental reforms to achieve that goal, including reforms to Section 230, enacting antitrust reforms, requiring more transparency, and more. And he's encouraged that there's bipartisan interest in Congress.
Now, that all said, I just want you to have a look at this. This is basically the shares of the major tech funds, the ad ones, the ones that take advertising. Facebook, its owner Meta, is down 44% this year. Google's owner Alphabet is down 15%. But have a look at Twitter there. Thanks to this takeover, it's up by 21%. So if you're a Twitter shareholder, should you be happy right now? Of course you should be, surely. Let's find out. With one of those shareholders, Forager Funds Management, its Chief Investment Officer is Steve Johnson, and he joins me now. Steve, just tell me one thing. Are you happy about this takeover or not?
I'm torn, Ross. I'm torn.
Why torn? Explain that to me.
Well, I'm torn because I think it is actually a fair price for the Twitter that you see in front of you today. This business is losing money. It has been losing money for a very long period of time. They've put 5 or 6 different turnaround plans in front of shareholders that haven't come to fruition. We paid $630 million in stock-based compensation to staff last year, and you look at Twitter and it's basically exactly the same product that it was 10 years ago. So we invested in this company back in 2020 with a view that it was a very, very valuable asset and that the steps to be taken to create that value for shareholders were fairly straightforward and partially underway. And to be frank, it's been quite a frustrating 2-year period on that front. The only people that have done particularly well out of it are staff. As you put up on the screen, the share price that's being bid here is a substantial premium to where it was 3 months ago. And perhaps as importantly, there are lots of interesting things for us to do with the money out there. It's a very volatile market. Lots of shares have been absolutely smashed. So you get offered a premium and there's lots of opportunity out there to reinvest the money. You should be happy with that, but there's also a part of me that feels he's getting a bargain here in terms of the price that he's paying, and that we're going to look back in 5 or 10 years' time and say, okay, all of that rhetoric about free speech, I have absolutely no doubt that Elon Musk believes that, but he's also very, very good at making a buck, and it's my view that we're going to look back and say all of his talk about not wanting to make an economic profit or not caring that he makes an economic profit was bluster and designed to get shareholders to take his bid.
OK, so then I want to go to one other aspect. You say that you believe Twitter should be the most valuable media asset on the planet. Why do you make that view? Because if that's true, then he has bought a bargain if he can actually extract that value.
Yeah, well, I think the biggest thing for me is that it's probably the most sustainable of the social media assets. You know, you look at Facebook. I've got a 21-year-old niece who's never, ever been on Facebook in her life, and I think they've got massive generational problems there that the kids coming through are using TikTok. They're not using Instagram. They're not using Facebook. And in another generation's time, the kids are going to be using something different again, and TikTok will be the one that's on the wane. And I think that's the challenge in this space, is that things are hot for a period of time, then they slowly become unpopular, and then it gets harder and harder to generate revenue out of it. Twitter, on the other hand, is really for geeks and wonks and people like me that like talking about finance on there. And although we may be a niche of the population, we're a niche that exists in every single generation. And you see on Twitter, there are young people on there talking about stuff, and I feel like it's a much, much more sustainable asset than some of the other social media platforms, despite the fact that it's never, ever going to have, you know, the 1 billion users that a Facebook has. I think its users are going to be more sustainable, and that they can grow that from 250 million today to 350, 400 million users, and more importantly, just get more revenue per user. They've been absolutely woeful relative to Facebook, Instagram, even a business like Pinterest, which is tiny and niche, has done a much, much better job than Twitter has done. And that's been the most frustrating part from our perspective.
And what does it say about the board of Twitter, which only 2 weeks ago said no to Elon Musk, tried to put a poison pill in place to prevent him buying any more shares, and then 2 weeks on, rolls over, has its tummy tickled and basically says it'll sell out to him.
Yeah, we've been very, very frustrated. And it's a part of this that is added to our frustration. We shouldn't be surprised. You know, when you invest in a company that has been mismanaged for a long period of time, you're the stupid one if you think it's going to change instantaneously the day that you get involved. So it's not a complete surprise to us. But even the way they have managed the deal, from our perspective, there was more money to be extracted here from a potential bidder. I think there's potentially more money again from other potential bidders for the stock if they run this process in the right way. But like I said, when you've seen a certain behaviour for the past 10 years, to expect something different is borderline insanity. So it's not a surprise to us, but it is, again, disappointing. And, you know, we're not going to accept this. Last week it was a poison pill, if you remember. They put in place a special structure that was supposed to give everyone shares at a lower price if he increased his holding above 15%. And then we wake up this morning and at exactly the same price that he's been talking about for 2 weeks, it's all of a sudden this is a great deal and you're not going to do any better.
That's the amazing thing,
it's
isn't it?
It's disappointing and it's frustrating. But like I said, there's lots of good things to do with the money out there.